That's okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm excited. I feel like it's the Indy 500. All right, ladies, take your seats for our panel here, and then also for our folks in the audience. My name is Mary Malone. I'm the president of the Greater Hazleton Chamber of Commerce. I'm part of the chamber team. But how about a huge round of applause for our good friends at the Scranton Chamber who have been the mighty leaders for the day that we've had today. Isn't it fantastic? So my job is 100% the housekeeping rules for today. There is water that's in the back of the room for you. Again, in case you stepped outside to take the work call, make sure you turn your phone back to silent. They can wait an hour or so, right, for those important messages. And again, the app for questions that we might have. Victoria in the corner there will take them and then insert them into the conversation. And we need a round of applause for all of our virtual friends that we didn't necessarily get to meet face to face, but hopefully next year. But how about a round of applause for them too? All right, and I get to introduce the moderator today, and then she'll take it from there. So how about another round of applause for Nicole Strausser from Beneficial Services. And who doesn't have it?
So my name is Nicole Strasser from Prudential. I have the pleasure to be up here today to really talk about breaking boundaries and to have a lovely panel here with me to talk about their experiences. So I'm really excited today to kick it off. We have Tara Mugford Wilson, Liz Graham, and Natalie O'Hara. Tara is the president of Power Engineering Corporation, where she oversees the company's direction, relationship management, sales, and workforce, as well as all facets of the project management team. Elizabeth Liz Graham is the Chief Operating Officer and co-owner of Riggs Asset Management Company, one of Northeast Pennsylvania's largest independent advisory firms, building and preserving wealth for families and institutions for more than 30 years. And Natalie O'Hara is the president of D&O Enterprises, a construction company that has been family-owned for 3 generations, where Natalie has facilitated projects ranging from $11 million up to $108 million. You can read more on our panelists in the Empower app. All attendees, both in-person and virtual, I'm going to go through the logistics here, can submit questions via the app. If you're using the web-based platform, go to your agenda, then into the session, and on the right hand, you'll see a blue button, Ask a Question and Submit. In the mobile platform, from the home page, there's a session Q&A box mid-screen. You can go into, select the session, and submit your question there. All in-person guests, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions as well. So now join me in welcoming our panelists, and I will kick it off with a question. If each of you can go through your experiences in your field and what you thought was the biggest barrier you had to break through.
That'll be the most polite thing I do all day while we're here. So my name is Tara Mugford Wilson. I grew up in Dallas, Pennsylvania. I went to Drexel University and in the 80s and had a wonderful education that I thought would be all about finance and marketing. And then I ended up deciding to move back to our beautiful area, and I had the opportunity to go into our family business, Power Engineering, mechanical, construction, HVAC, plumbing, pipe fitting, all commercial, all industrial, multiple states, at 24 years old. Maybe 23, as a girl. Good luck with that. That in itself was a challenge. But I was too stupid to understand how big of a challenge, which was the biggest gift I probably ever got, because my dad always just said, do it. So I ended up using my finance degree to do some things that figured out some things in our industry that were unusual, i.e. we had a number of employees with a total book of business using our materials and our labor to do side work. So when I figured that out in about 2 months, my dad said, you should own the sheet metal business and the union plumbers and pipe fitters. I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. One of the many things my dad shoved me into over the years that made me who I am today. And again, the best hurdles were I was young, naive, and too foolish to recognize that none of those things should be happening. So every roadblock I ran into, I ran through it. And I had lots of people help me along the way, and I would say, find yourself some really spectacular mentors, and they will change. But that's kind of my takeaway. And I've been going ever since. I owned a union business for about 25 years. It was called Power Mechanical, and I spun that off and went back up to run Power Engineering, my dad's family business, about maybe 4 years ago, maybe it's 5, time flies. But I couldn't own Power Engineering or manage it and own a union contracting company, or it tied them to the union. And they have the ability to subcontract work in a number of different directions. That's part of their business model. So it's been an interesting ride, but that's my story.
So I'm Natalie O'Hara, and as you heard, I am president of D&O Enterprises, but we are a third-generation construction firm in Scranton. Much like Tara, I grew up locally, but I grew up on the Lackawanna County side of the valley, and I went to Lehigh University for civil engineering. And so my story is much like Tara's in that I grew up in and around the family business. Tara was on the finance side of things. Well, I was right in the meat and potatoes. I went for engineering, and I really had no idea that it was out of the norm. To my parents' credit, you can do anything you want to do. You can, whatever you set your mind to, you can do. We're going to equip you with the best education that we can, and as long as you work hard, you can do anything you want to do. And that I was too stupid to know that I was going to be one of about 5 or 6 women in a class of 115 or so civil engineers. We get to class the first day, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, what did I get myself into? Like, what's happening here? But I've never looked back, and someone asked me earlier today at the conference, would you change anything? And I said, no, I love what I do. I love working with different clients. I love that the fruits of my labor are physically, they turn into a building. I mean, you can't have much more tangible evidence than that. Of a work product well done. So it's frustrating on a lot of days, but it is to me, it's still a very fun profession, and I do really enjoy what I do. So, it's the sad days are when you see a work you did that's renovated, or God forbid, a building knocked down, a building that my grandfather built with my father's assistance was taken down by the University of Scranton a few years ago, and I think my dad was pretty sad about it, to be honest, and that's got to be a hard thing to take. But it's I think a great profession, and much like Tara said, I was too naive. I was going to say too stupid, but I'll say naive. That's nicer, to know that I was doing anything that was out of the ordinary. So I was blessed for that.
Hi, I'm Liz Graham, and my story's a little different in that, yes, I am part of a family business, but I did not grow up in the family business. My father didn't start our business until I was in college, and I had no expectations of coming home and joining the business. I was an English major, and I took off to DC, and I worked for a large national law firm in DC for about 10 years, and got a call from my brother who said, would you ever consider coming to the family business? And I had been, in that 10-year period working for the law firm, I managed their strategic planning and their marketing, and we had gone from, I think when I started in the position, we had revenues of 85 million, and when I left, we were at over 300 million in revenue, and it was an incredible team that made that happen. But I thought the opportunity to come home and be a part of something where I had skin in the game was just a really fun, cool challenge. And I always knew I could get another, if it didn't work out, I could always go back to DC. So I took a flyer and I moved back. I was in my early 30s. It was terrific. I didn't actually realize that the financial industry was a male-dominated industry. I was sort of naive, like you all, I didn't realize it until I guess I was about a year into the position, and we were going to go play in a golf tournament in New Jersey with one of the groups that manages custodies money for us. There are 144 golfers at this golf tournament. And I went into the locker room, and I was the only woman. I mean, the only woman. Like, not even the staff were in the locker room. Nobody was in the locker room but me. It was, like, weird. And then I went out into, where the carts were, and I just started to look around. I'm like, not one woman playing in this golf tournament. That's crazy. And that's really when it came, to my attention that I was in a male-dominated industry. So that's my story. Actually, I did give them.
Liz is a crazy good golfer. I'm betting she
over
won.
not having a women's division. I'm like, I would have that sewn up, right? But our team, my brother wasn't on his game, I will say. So we didn't win, no, but.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. So if I look back at what Tara and Natalie and Liz all shared, I think what really stands out is the just do it. Right? You can do anything. Loved the sharing of never look back and having skin in the game. And I think back to some of my experiences, and I laughed this morning as I was thinking about yesterday, and I was talking to my husband about coming here, and we're having a pool put in, and the contractors were there dropping materials off, and I mentioned that I wouldn't be home to see the start of the pool, and that I was going with my leader to a conference, and they asked me, they said, well, what does he do? I said, well, she is a vice president of operations, and I am a vice president of operations. And so it definitely sticks out that at times you're so busy working and getting it done, right? You're just doing it because you've always believed you can do it, but sometimes it's just reminding others that we are doing it. So with that being said, I'd like to ask each of you if you could share a moment where, Liz, I think you started us with the moment of the golf course, but if you have any other moments that you'd like to share around where that light bulb went off of, maybe I look a little different from everyone else here, but here's what I bring.
I'll address that. So, young, Scranton, Pennsylvania, born, bred. First job out of college, I'm working for Turner Construction, which is a large multinational construction firm in their New Jersey territory, and I get assigned as the field engineer to a job site in Newark, New Jersey. Not awesome, but it was a big job. It was a $60 million job, and it was a phased job in this giant hospital. It took up an entire city block in Newark, and one of the things that was my job was to go and do the daily reports every day. So how many do the mechanical contractor, how many people are on site, and how many people are on site for the drywaller, and where are they working, and what are they doing, and coordinate between them. And so I'm on site, and most of the guys were really, of course I'm the only woman on site. Now and again, the project accountant would stop on site and do something, but and it was not a big deal most of the time. But there was a sprinkler fitter who was younger, probably late 20s. So not like an old guy that you'd expect to maybe have a problem with a woman being on the construction site. And he had his big gang box, the giant box that they put their tools in. And, he sort of needled me every day. Just a little bit. Fine, I can take it, it's fine. And then one day he decided to redecorate his gang box. And he's like, Natalie, come look at the picture I put up for you. And you open the lid of the gang box, and it's a pornographic picture of a woman, crotch up, like, it just, and I was 23 years old. Not even, I was 22 years old. Like, what do I do with this? Like, how do I react? And that was the first time that I really felt intimidated and discriminated against. And what am I doing? Do I really want to do this? But he was the only one, and everybody else was good. And it took me really probably the rest of that week to kind of get my feet back under me, like, what the heck happened here? Like, how could somebody treat you like that? And I just, like, rise above it. That's the only thing you do, right? And that's sort of my core belief is you don't hire anybody because they're a woman or because they're black or because they're whatever diverse box you think you might want to check, but you hire them because they're good, and they're good at what they do, and because they work hard. And that's sort of when I decided that I was going to continue to work the hardest to show him and everybody else, but to show him that I deserved to be there. And so that was a very defining moment for me.
Tara, I think you should go next.
The difference between you and I is that's where I got my potty mouth.
Oh.
Because that happened to all of us at
I'm
one
sure it
point in
did.
time
I'm
or
sure it
another,
did.
yes. I learned along the way that I was never going to beat them at that game. Where I was going to beat them was day after day after day when we kept showing up. And we were smarter than they were. And we recognized their skill set for what they had a skill set in. But if you had a small mind like that, 9 times out of 10, the rest of the men on the job site took care of that for us. Because they didn't like it either. I mean, they had wives, they had daughters, they recognized how tasteless that nonsense really was. But you've done it, I've done it, all of the people that have come along since have, and you just gotta hold your head high and hope for the best. Where I was fortunate enough to really have people start to look at me differently was because of my union affiliation at Power Mechanical all those years. They recognized that I had a talent that they didn't have. The unions run all their own funds. So you have trusteeships on the sheet metal workers, the pipe fitters, the carpenters, the plumbers, and they pay union dues into all these different funds, and you have control over who manages that money or what you do with it or their health care. And it's a 2-tiered system where they have representation from the union side and you have representation from the ownership side, so the office people. So somewhere along the way, these were jobs nobody wanted to do because they take a lot of time, and it's at night, and it's a pain is what it boils down to. But at an association meeting, you know, that was a whole other thing, but they thought, oh, well, we'll make her do it because we won't have to. So when I got to the table, my finance background really helped. So I was able to save the pipe fitters one year $1 million on their healthcare plan because we went shopping, and they didn't understand how to do that. I saved them a ton of money on their money management side at one point and got them investors who managed their money that actually knew what the hell they were doing. It wasn't just a friend of a friend of a friend. It was somebody who really had a skill set. And over the years, they finally, and they never really said it out loud until I was going, but they were like, holy shit, are we gonna miss you? Like, what are we gonna do? I'm like, well, there you have it. You're welcome. But those are the kind of places, I think, where our education and our ability to be different really shifts the game. And don't ever look at your breadth of knowledge as being wasteful. If I can say anything, I've done so many things over my life where I thought this is a total waste of time. None of it has ever been a waste of time because you can pull from those experiences, good, bad, and indifferent, spin the situation and figure out how to handle something. Women are amazing multitaskers and problem solvers, and we don't get credit for it very often, but we all know we are. So use that skill. It will serve you well a million times over.
Well, sadly, I don't have a story that's anywhere near as traumatic, but it's probably it's probably a story that others can relate to, and I think it probably happens a lot. And that is that, when you own your own business, you do everything that needs to get done. If the trash can needs to be emptied and, there's nobody there to do it, you're going to go do it. And I feel the same way about answering the phone. And I will answer the phone if our team is somehow occupied doing something else. And I can't tell you how many times, I've had, people make an assumption because I'm the one that answered the phone. And I had one instance where a guy it was a guy, it doesn't always have to be a guy, but in this case it was a guy, and he was really rude, and wanted to get through to the owner of the company. And finally I just said, it's unlikely that you're going to speak to her. And he said, why is that? Because I'm her and you're done. Don't call. And I think that those types of assumptions sadly happen a lot. It's just, that's something we are hopefully moving away from, but certainly something everybody can relate to.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I loved the vulnerability of all three of you. Natalie, as you were telling your story, it kind of took my breath away. And I think about how blessed we are that we're continuing to move the needle. And I think about my two daughters entering the workforce. And just as all of our families have told us we can do anything, just continuing to push that. I loved hearing about being good at what you do and beating them by showing up. So thank you all for sharing. And I love the I am her. So I think we can all feel that moment and be able to reflect on that. So in keeping on the positive, I love the power of I am her. You're speaking to the owner. Can you share, what advice would you give people that are working on their career that they can continue to focus on to help them get to the next step?
So I would say, looking around this room, that everybody that's here is already doing one of the things that I think is most critical, and that is networking and connecting with each other. Tara said it, you take away from every experience, and the truth of the matter is I have learned so much. So here's a quick example. Tara and I drove up together, and I'm in the process of buying a building, and I got a quote for something, and I know nothing about this. This is not my wheelhouse. And so we're out in the hallway there, and I'm showing Tara the quote, and I said, explain to me, this seems high. And she's looking at it, she's like, yeah, it's high. And then she said, I'm going to teach you why it's high. Well, I would not be able to tap into Tara if we had not spent the time to network with each other. And if I hadn't texted her a week ago and said, hey, let's drive up together. So, we're both really busy. We never get to see each other, but this is half an hour in the car that we'll get to be together. That, to me, is the one thing that I would recommend every person do, man, woman, whoever.
So I said it before, one of the biggest things is to be the best at what you can do. Work hard to the best of your ability. That doesn't mean work from 6 o'clock in the morning till midnight every day. Some days it does, but it doesn't mean not to have a rest of your life around work. But the only way to stop the stereotype, and that's an unpopular opinion, but the only way to stop the stereotype that a woman can't do what a man can do is to show them and be good, be better, not just good, be better, and show them that just because you're a woman doesn't mean that you can't do it. It means that you can, and maybe you bring a different perspective that's really valuable. There's not a maybe about that. You do bring a different perspective that's very valuable. And so that's just keep working. Let the naysayers keep showing up, like Tara said. Let the naysayers say what they want to say. Just keep working harder and being better. And your training will show through, and your skills will show through and speak for themselves.
I never looked at being a woman as a detriment. I always went into every single situation saying, this is my secret power. Because at the end of the day, when you are one of the few women in the room, when you are willing to ask the questions that seem like they might be stupid, I can promise you most people in those rooms don't know the answer. They're just afraid to ask the question. So what I would challenge you to recognize is the only stupid question is the one you didn't ask. I mean, as long as you're prepared, you've done the work to be where you are, there isn't a stupid question. 2, you will gain respect by being vulnerable enough to recognize you are not the smartest person in the room. And Liz knows this about me. I'm the most self-deprecating human being probably on the planet. For a number of reasons, one of which is because I'm probably not anywhere near the smartest person in this room, but I go in knowing that I'm gonna leave smarter than I got there because I'm smart enough to listen to all the people around me, and I take the best of the best from that, I pack it away, and I pull it out of my big-ass purse when I need it. And I suggest all of you, your briefcase over there, sir, do the same. That is the best weapon that you have as a CEO, as a VP, as the assistant, as whatever place you're at, you're gonna earn your stripes over time. And when you are a hard worker, you show up and you are willing to be, to a certain degree, vulnerable, you will grow. And that's the secret sauce in my view.
Thank you. Tara, I love the secret power and packing it in your big ass purse. So I think about the example you shared before about you went shopping and were able to save $1 million. So want to just pause. I think we have a question from the app.
It's from Linda. It says, how do you champion others when you see there is a need, especially when they are not asking for help?
I think that really is about your friend group, and hopefully you, to Liz's point, have some network, whether it be totally professional and personal, whatever that looks like. But I know that you need to be everybody's cheerleader in your circle. So when you see somebody stepping off and not doing something well, don't think it's not your job to help them. Perfect example. I've had some things going on in my life that are a little bit, difficult. And Liz called me up recently and she said, get it together. I was like, she's right. And then she gave me some really good steps to help me. That's good coaching, and you should all be doing that for your peer group, your friends, your network, so that they come back and do it for you. Men do it all the time. Women think it's going to be snarky or not nice. You got to put a thicker skin on, and you got to recognize that we're not going to get there putting our heads down and hoping for the best. We need to help each other. And I get that from men as well as women, and you need to be able to take it and give it. So that's my advice.
So one of the commonalities that we have up here is that Liz, 13, 14, how many years ago? 2002. So, oh my God, 19 years ago? Oh my God. Had the foresight to start an amazing organization for women industry leaders, women executives, and it is an amazing group of women, and I am very privileged to be among the members, and Tara, and of course Liz was the spearheading the whole thing. And having having that audience that will call you out, like Tara said, you need to surround yourself with that audience. But to reach out to somebody who's not necessarily asking for help is a hard thing, because it's you feel like you're maybe overstepping your bounds, but you need that circle of people that, if you were them, then that's what you'd want, and you'd want someone to tell you when you walked out of the bathroom with toilet paper on your shoe. It's the same thing, right? You just need to be that kind person that can say, like, hey, get your shit together, and that's it. And like, how can I help you? I recognize this is a problem, and how can I help you? And so it's a courageous thing to have to do, but it's a loving thing to do. And the first step is to start with that circle of people that will be there to support you. So thank you for starting Circle of 100.
Well, like all good things, it was a lot of people that put that together. But I'm a big fan of the underdog. I mean, I am a person that looks around the room and says, who's the person that deserves it? Not the person most likely to get it because of their name or who they know or whatever. And so I tend to cheerlead those people. Because I just think it's the right thing. But I will say that everybody needs help. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. If we learn nothing through this pandemic, it's that we are all vulnerable to needing help. And the higher you go up in your career, honestly, the lonelier it is. It is very lonely when you are the one that has to make the decision on letting people go, or shutting something down, or taking out a really big loan, or whatever it is. That decision ends with you, and you have to make it to the best of your ability, and you've got a 50-50 shot that it's going to work out. But I'll tell you what, if you have a good network and you have close friends, when things start to go sideways, you have somebody you can call. And that's the most important thing, because things will go sideways. They just will. And so network, and create those friendships. And to be fair, I didn't call you out. It was more of like a, how you doing? conversation.
We're on a time.
Thank you, ladies, for sharing that. I'll just echo those comments about having your board of directors and people that are willing to tell you no or to tell you the truth. I think really will set you apart versus being surrounded by yes people. I think we've all seen failures where people are surrounded by yes people and what the outcome of that is. So thank you for sharing. I believe we have one other question through the app.
Yes, I have a question and a comment. So the comment is that you ladies are truly inspiring and empowering. So they should just say great job. And
Thank you.
Lisa asked, what suggestions do you have for being assertive but vulnerable in a humble way, especially around other women without coming across as a mean girl or a show-off?
I'm sorry, what was the last two things that you said?
So they said, how do you be assertive in a humble way, especially around other women and not in a way of being a mean girl or a show-off?
I think the best thing you can do, and if anybody was in Strother Gaines's proposal, is to be authentic. If you are trying to be someone's confidant, friend, in their circle, on their board of directors, as Nicole said, I think you just have an honest conversation with them, and you don't be assertive about it. You say, hey, can we have a conversation? And you come at it as a conversation between two people, not a lecture of, you're doing this wrong, and this is why. Maybe you lead them to that conclusion lead them to make that conclusion for themselves, as opposed to telling them right out, you're doing it wrong. Well, maybe, is there another way that we could look at this? Is there another way that this would work better? And help them see the conclusion as opposed to beating them over the head with the club that, like, you're wrong.
I think we as women sometimes have a thin skin, and I think you and I and Liz are a lot alike because we predominantly deal with men, that I don't sugarcoat what I say. And I may come off like that sometimes. I never mean it that way, but I think men don't worry about anything in that commentary. It's a business situation. They're giving you information, they're giving you direction, they're giving you what they expect. I find in my businesses, I am very direct. I am also the most caring, loving human being you would find. I'd give you the shirt off my back, and I'd cut my arm off if you needed it, if you're in my corner. That being said, I think we just all have to recognize that you can't make everybody happy all the time. And that's not our job. Our job is to coach the people in our organizations to be the best people that they can be to make our teams successful. And if you get your feelings hurt, I think the most empowering thing you can do is go to your supervisor and explain to them that that has happened and maybe how they could approach you better. Because I don't know anyone in any role that I've ever worked with that wouldn't take that criticism well. And it's a learning experience for management too. You know, not everybody takes things the best, but I always come at it from a direct approach. And sometimes that does startle some people. I mean, I can soften it quickly, but you need to own a little bit of your own destiny.
Yeah, I think that Natalie and Tara, great advice. Being direct, I just think that that's the way to go. I will share a story. I don't even know if Tara remembers this, but we were both sitting on this particular board, and it was probably 40 people on this board and maybe 3 women, Tara and I being 2 of them. And Tara and I disagreed on a pretty core issue before the board. And she and I, in the board meeting, started to debate it. And I looked around, and the men scooted their chair back. They were like, wow, we got Liz and Tara at it. No holds barred. And I was like, we're professionals. I'm not going to agree with everything you think. You're not going to agree with everything I think. And when the discussion was over and the board meeting was over, I said, so how is Alex doing at school? We're friends. So it's just business. I don't know how else to say it. You be direct. I don't do everything perfectly. I need criticism and constructive criticism, as does everybody else. And you learn from that. So I think that was great advice.
Thank you. I'll add on that one of my leaders, when giving very direct instructions or feedback, sets a stage. I'm going to be really direct, and here's why. There's either a timetable that I'm trying to meet, and that's why I'm being very direct. It's a sensitive topic, and I want you to be aware because this could hurt you if you're not aware of this and you're not thinking about it. But having the open dialogue about why you're having the conversation and why the tone is the tone, but that transparency led to a lot of trust. So it allowed for difficult conversations in both directions, where I felt very comfortable calling and saying, I don't think that conversation went well with the team, and here's why, or here's what I don't think we're thinking about and how it's coming off, and not settling right with people or rubbing the wrong way when we could attack it a different approach. So I think it created an environment for open dialogue. So I would just echo those comments about being direct, offering help, and also starting with the intent of the conversation so that people are open to the feedback. So thank you for the question. I'm gonna just pause. Any questions from the audience? I know we're getting some through the app.
Thank you. Can I just make a comment on that? When you were talking and I was listening to what you were saying, it brought back a memory that really served me well, and I think speaks to what you were talking about. When I was in DC, I got a promotion, and the one sort of negative of the promotion is that I was going to have to work with a partner in the firm who was very challenging, and it was a woman. And her associate, her lead associate, came up to me, a man, and he said, look, this is how you work with Lynn. Call her every night, leave her a voicemail, tell her what's going on. She's a micromanager, she freaks out when she doesn't know what's going on, and you're just gonna do yourself a service by speaking her language. I am not a micromanager, so that was not my, normal way. But I took that to heart, and what I took away from that is that if I am speaking and it's not getting through, that's on me, right? I have to figure out how to communicate to that person in the way that they hear what I'm trying to say. And I find that sometimes, whether it's gender differences or age differences, it's me that has to figure it out. And sometimes you never figure it out. I mean, sometimes you're just going to be two people that don't connect. But that's what I learned from that experience, and that's what I always try and do when I'm in a conversation. I can tell when somebody is not listening to me, when they've tuned me out, when they're thinking about what they're going to have for dinner that night. I get that sense, right? And so then I try and change tacks. So for whatever that's worth, when you were talking about, the communication, I think that's a key skill set, for me anyway. You are 100% correct.
Vicki, any more questions via the app?
There is one more, and we have 1 minute left. So this is like a speed round thing, answer if you can. Not everyone is above average at their job. Some of us are just starting our career in male-dominated industries and trying to set foot in the industry. So how do we handle BS and disrespect when you are just starting up without hammering our career and or opportunities?
Two things. Get yourself a mentor who's older, wiser, and has dealt with it to coach you. Second thing, and they're out there. All of us would do it. Second thing is sometimes ignoring what you've heard and walking away is the only reaction, and it's often the best. I just pretend I don't hear it most times.
Very good advice, Tara. I would only add that you can learn from multitude of sources. One of the best pieces of advice I got when I was first starting out at that job site in Newark was that there was a multitude of tradesmen there. I didn't know how to do their job. I didn't know how to finish drywall. I didn't know how to put together ductwork or whatever the case may be. Learn from the tradesmen that know their job. Even though you're there, quote unquote, in charge of them, learn from them. And you can learn from everybody in your field at all levels. And so this person needs to know their worth, that they have something to contribute to that learning conversation, but also that they can learn from many people. But always, 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 what Tara said, you know, sometimes the best response is to just, you didn't hear it, you just walk away. Because you don't ever want to say something you regret, especially at the outset of your career. You don't want to be branded as difficult, which women often do, get branded as that. So you get very good at holding your tongue and knowing your battles, really picking your battles, and knowing when to live to fight another day.
I think that's a tough one. I think that when you're young in your career, as Natalie said, you're learning. And what you're learning, if you're lucky and you have a great boss and great mentor, is how to be a great boss and a great mentor. And if you don't have that, then you're learning what not to do. But you're always learning. I think that you have to navigate, and it's such a, if I knew what the situation was, maybe I could help better, but you have to, your career is navigating. I'm looking at Mary Malone, who's a longtime friend and the head of the Hazelton Chamber. I watched her navigate her career. We've all had to do that. We're all in family businesses, so it's a little bit different, but we've all had outside work experiences, and, you don't always get great bosses. I mean, that's just the truth of it. And sometimes you have to walk away, and I mean out of the job. Like sometimes it's just, you're never going to get where you need to get, and you have to recognize that too, and decide that you're going to find your opportunity somewhere else. So.
All right, with that, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation and thank the panelists for their participation. Thank you.
Thank you.